Hello, my dear Facebook friends. How are you? This is Father Jose coming to you from All Saints Parish here in Bay City. So happy to see you all. Thank you for joining in this reflection for the 18th Sunday in Ordinary Time C. And here I am coming to you with my little friend Luke. My friend Luke is over there. He's chilling over there. Hey, Josie, how you doing? Spencer, how are you, my brother? Good to see you, man. David, how is it going? This is time for Couch Church, right? And so we are really, I'm looking forward to hear what I'm gonna say. Can't wait to hear what I'm gonna say. Hey, Mary Lou, how you doing? Julio, ¿cómo estás, hermano? Un saludo. Josie, how you doing? Good to see you. All right, so we have some phenomenal readings today, and I will end up reading them all, honestly, because they all have an important part in the message of today. Certainly, they all focus on how possessions vanish. Hey, Amy, how you doing? Hey, Stacy, how you doing? Oh, everyone is joining in now. Wonderful. I'm going to silence the notifications, otherwise I will be distracted. Hey, Mike, how is it going, Mr. Mike? Okay, I will silence them. Okay, ta-da! I don't see them anymore, so that means I cannot see your tomatoes or anything like that. That way I cannot be distracted, okay? All right, so I'm going to read them all, I guess. I mean, the first one, let's go to the first one from the book of Ecclesiastes. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. Amen. Vanity of vanities, says Koheleth. Vanity of vanities, all things are vanity. Here is one who has labored with wisdom and knowledge and skill, and yet another who has not labored over it. He must leave property. This is also vanity and a great misfortune. For what profit comes to man from all the toil and the anxiety of heart with which he has labored under the sun? All his days, sorrow and grief are his occupation. Even at night, his mind is not at rest. This is also vanity. Wow. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And for this particular text, the word vanity could be translated also as wind. So it is like something that just vanishes. It's vanity because it just vanishes. It just goes like, it just vanishes, disappears. And that's the reality of earthly possessions. They just go away. I mean, Spencer is here with us. Spencer has a funeral home, and he knows very well, our mortality. We die, and when we die, we don't bring anything with us. Kind of a joke I put earlier when I was announcing this reflection, the hearse with the U-Haul. And so we know that that's happening in real life. And so Koheleth, certainly Ecclesiastes, is stating that what we have in this world eventually just vanishes. I'm thinking, for example, we have so many funerals here at our parish, and the things that the children are left with after grandma and grandpa passes away. Of course, there are those things that are meaningful, and they come to the family. They are handed down to the family, the relatives. But those are only few things. I mean, the majority of stuff that people leave behind in their homes, it's unbelievable. I mean, you look at things and you're like, why do people even keep this type of stuff? Remember that the temptation when we look at the readings regarding riches and how material things vanish, the temptation for us is to think that these readings are for them, meaning for somebody else, for the rich, for those that have so much money, those that make six figures salaries, for those that work in Hollywood, or for the superstars, or for sports stars, or for politicians, or for people who we think have their life all together. Well, the gospel is also for them, but the gospel is for me. The gospel is for you. The message of the first reading of today is for you and for me, that whatever we have eventually just vanishes. certainly the first reading is a little bit pessimistic, but at the same time it's very realistic. And if you have had somebody in your family who had died, and then you had to clean that house, you know what I'm talking about, okay? And so material possessions at the end of the day we cannot take with us. With these thoughts we go into the gospel, okay? And the gospel is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, verses 13 to 21. And I love this because this is a parable of a man who asks himself a question and he himself answers the question, and he's so happy about it. It's so funny. It's really a monologue. It's almost comical, okay? So I'm going to read it now. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." And he replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" And then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed. For though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." And then Jesus told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, that's the question, he's asking himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have a space to store my harvest." And he said, "Oh, this is what I shall do." So he's answering himself. "I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I shall store all my grain and other goods. And I shall say to myself," once again, "Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry." So he asks himself, answers himself, and then approves the message. Okay? So this is me asking myself, and I approve my message. It's amazing. But God then said to him, "You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong? Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. I go to the hospital pretty much on a daily basis, and when I visit people at the hospital, what I see is a person whose body or whose mind is broken, and then a family around this person whose body and mind is broken and is in need of healing. And I can tell you 100% of the time when I am there, there is nothing else that matters to them than that person to recover healing. They don't care about anything else. They don't worry about anything else. Everything can wait. The one thing that they're focused on is my brother, my son, my dad, my mom to be healed. That's their only focus. And so when in the gospel of this parable that Jesus proposes in the Gospel of Luke, he's saying, "You fool, your life will be demanded of you, and all the things you have prepared, to whom shall they belong?" He is giving us a not so friendly reminder that when really the rubber meets the road, nothing that we have really matters. And sometimes that account comes through sickness, and sometimes even comes through death. And so this is serious stuff that was true 2,000 years ago with Jesus' time, and it is also true for us right now. Everything can wait, and everything that we have, it just vanishes. It's nothing. It's nothing. I started my homily today by sharing that when the first reading the gospel, they focus on possessions, on material things. As you can see, I have plenty of possessions, because it's not enough to have one fish tank, right? I have to have 5. I know. Father Andy has talked to me about that. Then I also have the museum, and the museum has plenty of items, and they are all meaningful. I mean, this is not junk, I hope. And this is all good stuff, but it's still a lot of possessions, still a lot of stuff. But we also have to remember that things, objects, they do not have value in themselves. They have value from the appreciation that we give to them. Because at the end of the day, they are just things, okay? And so we give them value. And so an example that I use is, for example, giving a gift, a Christmas gift to a baby. Have you ever given a Christmas gift to a baby? And you give the gift in a beautiful wrap, and the baby could care less about the gift. The baby loves the wrap. Have you seen that? Okay? So the wrap, whether it is just those crunchy ones or the bubble ones, oh, and those babies, they love it so much and they are playing with it. They could care less about the toy that you spend just $50 on. Because for them, what has value is what gets their attention. In this case, the valuable thing is the wrap, not the gift. We give value to things. And advertisers know this. And they know this very well. Because advertisers do not necessarily want you to buy things that you need. But most importantly, they want us to buy things that we don't need. And they have to create that craving in ourselves, that desire for the things they want to sell us. And this is when our desire for greed kicks in. Okay? For example, I read the other day, I was reading one book. I'm reading all kinds of books on minimalism and simple life. And so one of the things that I read was that every day we are bombarded with 5,000 pieces of advertisement. Just think about that. 5 pieces of advertisement. And if you really do some kind of memory, when you drive and all the advertisement you see, when you are hearing the radio, you're hearing all the advertisement. When you're watching the TV, you're seeing all the advertisement. When you're checking your Facebook, you're seeing all the advertisement. And it's all stuff. And they are saying, you need this. And perhaps you don't need this. 99% of the time. But the advertisers know that when they put the image in front of you, then suddenly you begin to crave for it. And that craving makes a rush of dopamine in your brain, in our brain, and that instant gratification makes us go and do impulsive buying. This is what in internet, for example, we call that the clickbait. When you check, for example, YouTube videos, and there is one title of the video that is a catchy title that gets your attention, so you go and click. It is the same thing that happens when we do online shopping. And I am the worst at this, okay? My secretary can give testimony to this, especially when I buy things on Amazon. Honestly, it's not even the things. It is the click. It is the clickbait. It is the rush of dopamine saying, buy now. And then immediately, poof, that goes into instant gratification in the brain, and then there is a release of dopamine, and suddenly we feel instantly gratified and happy for 2 seconds. And so this is part of that phenomenon of greed, of desiring more. And once again, it's not even about the object. Many times, let's say I was shopping on Saturday night, and then Tuesday morning the boxes are at the office waiting for me. I don't even remember what's in the box. That's how important these things were for me, that I don't even know what they were. So when you're shopping online, it is all about the click and the rush of dopamine, not so much about the object. And that's greed. Now let's see what St. Paul says about that. My brothers and sisters, if you were raised with Christ, seek what is above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Think of what is above, not what is on earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ your life appears, then you too will appear with him in glory. Put to death then the parts of you that are earthly: immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and the greed that is idolatry. Stop lying to one another, since you have taken up the old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed for knowledge in the image of its creator. And then the reading continues. It really caught my attention. That was Paul's clickbait. Greed, that is idolatry. Put to death then all these things of the flesh, and they are several of them, and then the last one, greed, that is idolatry. And that's the key for understanding this particular passage, because greed is the desire of self-gratification through an object. Okay, so like the example of the gospel, I have all my barns, but I need larger ones. And once he builds larger ones, he is happy. Now he's like, okay, he had the rush of dopamine. Oh, I feel good now because now I'm safe. I have enough space for all my harvest. So it's not so much the harvest itself. It is the rush of dopamine, of the joy of having something, the self-pleasure, greed, and that's idolatry. And so in this sense, when St. Paul speaks about greed, that is idolatry, he's saying that when we are greedy, we are making our self-gratification, our self-pleasure, God, an idol. And therefore we put the true God aside, and our self-pleasure becomes the idol. And that's why greed is idolatry. And then he gives other examples. Put to death then immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire. You know, all these things, they are about what? They're about me. It's about my pleasure, what gives me pleasure. That's what immorality is all about. The immoral person is not thinking about the other, he's thinking about themselves. So we have to put to death all these things, and they are all together greed, which is idolatry. When we put aside God, and our self-pleasure becomes our God. That's rough stuff, okay? But once again, this gospel or this message of Paul in the second reading to the Colossians is not for them. It's not for the rich. It's not for those who work for Hollywood. It's not for the, football players that have made millions. No, it's for you and for me. Because you and I experience greed even from the time that we were babies. Have you ever gone with a kid to a store with a low budget and the kid wants to buy plenty of stuff? Greed is so ingrained in us because of our falling nature. And so we always desire something more. And it is that desire that leads us into these other things. For example, I can think of my own struggle with obesity. It's about greed at the end of the day. Many times it's not even so much about the food that I put in my mouth, because I have learned a lot in the last year and a half of what I should eat, what I shouldn't. But it's more that greed, that desire of satisfaction. Because if I eat this is going to give me peace. And then, when you eat something that you like, and then the pleasure that you feel, it's all the rush of dopamine saying, oh, this is fantastic, I want more. Instead of saying, this is fantastic, I have had enough. Greed doesn't work that way. This is so fantastic, I want more and more and more. And so my self-gratification becomes an idol. It's not for them, it's for you, it's for me. Okay? Another aspect of greed can be also through time. Okay? Because we may think greed about objects, but it's also greed about time. One of the greatest evils of our time, and I am at fault in this too, is multitasking. Have you ever heard about that before? I am sure. Multitasking, which is greed for time, so that I can at the same time do 2, 3, or 4 things. Unbelievable, isn't it? Well, we know the consequences of the greed of multitasking. Think about the many accidents that have taken place for texting and driving, doing it at the same time. What about eating while driving? And another one that I saw the other day, the ladies doing their makeup while driving. Talk about multitasking, right? And of course, with the search of internet and internet browsers, and even with several devices, even myself, I have an iPad here, and so I am doing two things at the same time. We have this possibility that our brain is almost splitting at the same time into several things. And we say that this is good. It's not. It's not. And this is not only a novelty. This is something that has happened forever. I remember being a couple years ago at we were toasting for some priests that were celebrating anniversaries. And one priest was described as the king of multitasking. This was an old priest, he's dead now, that he had in one hand his rosary, in his other hand the breviary, and on the TV the Tigers game. So talk about that multitasking right there. And the reality is that when we have this greed for time and for activities at the same time, we don't do any of them well. What about if instead of multitasking, we go into monotasking and be in the moment and live in the moment? I was saying today in church, those who are grandparents, those who are parents, your kids, they will never praise you for being such a great multitasker when they are asking you to listen to them. They will actually bless you and praise you when you monotask and you had your complete attention on them. They will remember forever those days. Those are the days that are appreciated. Monotasking as opposed to the greed of multitasking. But Father, this gospel about riches, I'm not rich, I am on a fixed income, Father. And I live in a simple house. You can be greedy too. Remember the last time that you went to a garage sale. I can assure you that in the garage sale, you didn't spend thousands of dollars. You probably spent $3, whatever. But you had exactly the same rush of dopamine. When you get into that garage sale and the people have stuff that has no longer value for them. It used to have value for them, and now they are telling you, you should have this. And not only that, it's 55 cents. And there is that rush of dopamine. I need this. And perhaps you don't. This is somebody else's junk, and now it's going to become your junk. Greed, is that greed? Oh, I gotta go and hit 3 garage sales today because I'm gonna get good deals. That's greed. That's greed for more and more. And you don't need to spend millions of dollars to be greedy. You can be poor and still be greedy. So the challenge once again comes to us. That dopamine rush of greed. It is expressed in food, internet shopping, real shopping, at the market, at the rummage sale. It's not for the rich, it's for us. We experience it. It is greed for pleasure, for the pleasure of that instant gratification. And the readings of today tells us that this is idolatry. And that ultimately it vanishes because it just goes away. Just goes away. Let us fix therefore our hearts on the things that truly matter. Stuff is simply stuff, and they only have value in as much as we give them value. But what truly has value is God, our true God, to whom we need to adore, the only one, and not the self-pleasure of greed, because that's idolatry. God bless you and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.